This week, we are reviewing one of the more macabre books I've ever read, Perfume, The Story of a Murderer. I'm writer and author Scott Seeger, and today we'll be diving into the head of a gruesome killer. Here are 5 things you will love about Perfume, The Story of a Murderer. Number 1. This is one of the most unique stories I've come across. Perfume is about an 18th century perfumer who murders women for their scent. His goal is to construct the ultimate scent that will allow him to control people through their olfactory inputs. I don't think I've ever run across a story this strange and yet so compelling. The book follows the killer from his birth when his mother delivers him under a butcher's table in the Paris fish market. After she abandons the newborn and is put to the gallows, the baby, named Jean-Baptiste Grenouille, is kicked around the city's orphanages. Everyone who comes in contact with this newborn knows there's something strange about him, but can't quite put their finger on it. A priest of the orphanage describes an uneasy feeling he experiences just by being in the same room with the baby. The child saw him with its nostrils, as if it were staring intently at him, scrutinizing him, more piercingly than eyes ever do, as if it were using its nose to devour something whole, something that came from him. We learn that Jean-Baptiste Grenouille has a powerful sense of smell. So great is his sense of smell that he can detect objects beyond walls. He can also figure out where you just came from by the lingering odor on your clothes. He can even detect people approaching from blocks away, all from the use of his nose. When the headmaster of one of the orphanages forgets where she hid her stash of money, the now child Grenouille tells her where it is, since he can detect the smell of the currency in its hiding place. Can he see through walls, she wonders? He announces to her that someone is about to arrive at the door, making her wonder if he can see into the future. Who would think it was all due to a heightened sense of smell? Your dog has the ability to do this, but it doesn't dawn on anyone that a human could have this. This makes the headmaster realize there's something disturbingly wrong about this kid. Maybe he's possessed, or maybe he's the devil himself. So she does what any good headmaster of a foster home would do. She sells him into slavery at the local tannery. An 18th century Parisian tannery does not sound like the best place for a child, but it builds character in Grenouille. He scraped the meat from the beastly, stinking hides, watered them down, dehaired them, limed, baited, and fulled them, rubbed them down with pickling dung, chalked wood, stripped bark from birch and yew, climbed down into the tanning pits filled with caustic fumes, layered the hides and pelts just as the journeyman ordered him, spread them at smalled gallnuts, covered them with ghastly funeral pry and yew branches and earth. He also suffers from a bout of anthrax, leaving him deformed. As he slaves away for years, his perseverance and immunity from anthrax earns him some freedoms. One day, the man in charge of the tannery takes him to the marketplace to sell their leather hides, and the market yields an entirely new collection of smells, which Grenouille indulges in. He did not differentiate between what is commonly considered a good and a bad smell, not yet. He was greedy. The goal of the hunt was to simply possess everything the world could offer in the way of odors, and his only condition was that the odors be new ones. All of this is fascinating to the reader, but then something grabs Grenouille's olfactory attention, and this is the part of the book that propels the story into the grotesque. He detects a scent so sublime he can't resist following it to the source. Not like silk, but like pastry, soaked in honey-sweetened milk. And try as he would, he couldn't fit those two together, milk and silk. The scent was inconceivable, indescribable, and could not be categorized in any way. It really ought not to exist at all. And yet there it was, as plain and splendid as day. The smell is that of a teenage girl. Although she's only described as green-eyed and red-haired, we don't need much of a physical description, and neither does Grenouille. Her beauty is her scent. Her sweat smelled as fresh as the sea breeze. The tallow of her hair as sweet as nut oil. Her genitals were as fragrant as the bouquet of water lilies. Her skin as apricot blossoms. And the harmony of all these components yielded a perfume so rich, so balanced, so magical, that every perfume that Grenouille had smelled up until now, every edifice of order that he had so playfully created within himself, seemed at once to be utterly meaningless. He promptly strangles the girl and immerses himself in her perfect fragrance. He thrust her face into her skin and swept his flared nostrils across her, from belly to breast to neck, over her face and hair, and back to her belly, down to her genitals, to her thighs and white legs. Just a warning, we are going to use a lot of quotes in this book review, and that leads us to number 2, the descriptive prose. I'm quoting this book quite a bit because it's so damned quotable. Books these days lack the loads of flowery description that they once did, and today's writers have good reason to do this. It's because readers don't take to this as they once did. Contemporary readers become bored with page after page of vivid description, even if it's done well. The reason why In this modern day and age, we have access to many forms of media and are aware of what most story worlds look like. 100 years ago, readers might not know what a castle in the Carpathians looked like, or an orbiting space station, or the Shire of Middle-earth, or the interior of a submarine, so picturesque description was sought out by readers. Today, readers could pick up a submarine book and not need an explanation of captain's quarters, diving procedure, periscopes, or active versus passive sonar. The layman knows what the inside of a sub looks like without ever stepping foot in one, because movies and books have painted a huge variety of story worlds that are inventoried in our imaginations. People who read Dickens in the 1800s did not have that benefit, so detailed description was necessary and appreciated by readers. So why does flowery, vivid description work so well in this book and not others? Because you've never experienced a story world like that of Perfume. This unique world is constructed completely from the point of view of scent. Can you think of one book that has done this? If so, by all means, tell me in the comments. Since a world revolving around smells is rare, we embrace the vivid description. So in 1872, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea gave readers a first look at submarines, and now, when we read Perfume, we get the first glimpse of what a world driven by scent might look like. I've never heard Paris described quite like this. The streets stank of manure, the courtyards of urine, the stairwells stank of moldering wood and rat droppings, the kitchens of spoiled cabbage and mutton fat, the unaired parlors stank of stale dust, the bedrooms of greasy sheets, damp feather beds, and the pungently sweet aroma of chamber pots. The peasant stank, as did the priest, the apprentice, as did his master's wife. The whole of the aristocracy stank, even the king himself stank like a rank lion, and the queen like an old goat. Summer and winter. There are other wondrous descriptions of people Grenouille meets, the girls he murders, the alleys he wanders down, the countryside he explores, all described from the point of view of scent. It is a beautiful world at the service of a grotesque story. Eventually our hero wants to hone the craft of cultivating smells and finds a job as a perfumer's assistant, and that leads us to number 3. The character arc. I enjoy great arcs where a character doesn't just react to the story world, but rather grows on their journey. Jean-Baptiste Grenouille actually does grow in his own sadistic way. With each stage of life, he journeys on a path of self-discovery. In his youth, he wants to experience as many smells as he can. After he survives the hazards of the tannery, he hooks up with a professional perfumer and develops his skills of extracting scent and creating perfumes. And he's quite good at his chosen vocation, as his employer, the newly retired Giuseppe Baldini, samples Grenouille's first concoction. Baldini closed his eyes and watched as the most sublime memories were awakened within him. He saw himself as a young man walking through the evening gardens of Naples. He saw himself lying in the arms of a woman with dark curly hair, and saw the silhouette of a bouquet of roses on the windowsill as the night wind passed by. He heard the random songs of birds and the distant music from a harbor tavern. He heard the whispering in his ear. He heard "I love you," and felt her hair ruffle with bliss. Now, at this very moment. Yes, that is what he feels after smelling the divine perfume created by Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. Baldini shows the young Grenouille the skill of steam distillation to capture fragrances and create essential oils, and in exchange, Grenouille provides Baldini with a variety of compelling fragrances to sell in his shop. When Grenouille reaches the apex of his skills, he leaves Paris to exile himself in a cave to reflect on all the scents he's stored in his memory. 7 joyous years later, Grenouille emerges from the cave as a new man and is inspired with a diabolical plan. He would be able to create a scent that was not merely human but superhuman, an angel scent, so incredibly good and vital that whoever smelled it would be enchanted and with his whole heart would have to love him, Grenouille, the bearer of that scent. Grenouille will create a perfume so sublime that he will become a deity to anyone who inhales it, but he needs more raw ingredients from the most consummate source he knows. So as we travel with Grenouille, we watch him grow in his own monstrously detached manner, from an imbiber of smell, to a student of smell, to a creator of smell, and finally, to a god of smell. His plan is vile, disgusting, and disturbing, and renders the book unputdownable. Number 4, he's the ultimate sociopath. The term sociopath is thrown around a lot these days, but the meaning is somebody who has antisocial attitudes and behaviors. Someone who doesn't care about the stuff most of us are supposed to care about. Jean-Baptiste Grenouille is a man who fits this profile as though he were the mold. He doesn't care about his victims like a normal serial killer does. Traditional killers in fiction have deep psychological connections, symbolic meanings, or some sort of moral code-based justification. Grenouille doesn't have mother issues like Norman Bates. He's not trying to make a moral statement like Kevin Spacey. He doesn't have some deep childhood issues like Dexter. Since these killers are preoccupied by their victims and very much care about how and why they kill, it could be argued that they are not sociopaths, but merely psychopaths. Usually fiction doesn't look at true sociopaths. Since they don't care about anything, they make for a dull subject matter. Sociopaths don't have all those neat plot elements to play with. So being in the head of Jean-Baptiste Grenouille is a unique experience since he's a detached killer who murders for a practical purpose. Don't get me wrong, I loved learning about Dexter and his dark passenger, but by season 4 I was really tired of his voiceover. I wanted him to just shut the hell up and get on with killing people. To this end, we the reader actually empathize with Grenouille. He's not so much a killer, but an obsessed man with an ambitious goal. He's less on par with Hannibal Lecter and more like a wine sommelier. The murders aren't the point for this man, they are more of an inconvenience. He murders young women with the same detached mannerisms as a quilting lady picking up yarn at the fabric store. He's just a man obsessed with smells, and since the Hobby Lobby doesn't have a human scent section, his raw ingredients are inconveniently attached to the life of pubescent girls. If there was only an easier way to remove someone's skin without all the squabbling and screaming. To this end, Grenouille is the ultimate sociopath. And as a matter of fact, the biggest critique Amazon reviewers had of this book is that there isn't enough murder subject matter. Maybe it's because the subtitle, The Story of a Murderer, implies a traditional serial killer story that focuses more on the killings and the motivations rather than the killer's hobby. I get that. I mean, what if Silence of the Lambs focused on Buffalo Bill teaching us how to sew? That would be kind of boring. These complaints come from genre readers that must have everything a certain way. Each genre has its rules and plot points that must be followed. If not, then those readers who read 10 books a month have their heads explode. So if you're expecting a murder mystery, you will be disappointed. This is really a book about a man with an intense hobby who happens to murder people now and then as needed. Number 5, the movie. Here at The Book Was Better, I try to get my viewers to read more books, so I talk about the movie as little as possible. I have to resist the temptation to discuss the differences between the book and the movie. I can't stand those know-it-alls who think they're on a higher plane of existence because they read Game of Thrones before it was a TV show. But this one I can't resist. You must see the movie. Of course, Hollywood can recreate 18th century France. That's easy. And they can do a movie about a taboo subject like a guy who kills 15-year-old redheads. Yeah, that's also easy. But the real challenge, can you film smells? The answer is yes. This is a vile movie, and I mean vile in a good way. They show images juxtaposed with sound effects and quick edits, and it really puts you in the stinky alleyways and streets of Paris. You can smell this movie as you're watching it in your living room. And when you finish the book, you might ask yourself a question about the movie. How is Hollywood gonna mess up the very unfilmable ending? Well, the answer is, they don't. They keep the extraordinary ending just as it is in the book, and a movie that has already given us everything manages to top that by being loyal to the end. This film is a monumental achievement, and you should see it. But read the book first. Here's an odd question for you to answer in the comments. Which movies can you smell? I swear I could smell a wretched alley when I watched Perfume. Another movie that people say they can smell is Das Boot, about a German U-boat. It's filmed in such a claustrophobic manner that viewers have claimed that they can smell diesel machinery and the sweat of the terrified sailors. Are there any other movies that affected your non-sight and sound senses? Leave some suggestions in the comments. That's it for this week. Check out my own book, Grand Portage, about a man who drags a nuclear aircraft carrier across northern Minnesota. It's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Make sure to hit the subscribe and click on that notification bell for more great book reviews, and never stop reading.